Hello and welcome to the latest edition of Gar Borras Rewind. Gar, this is episode number 6. It's been a while since we've done one of these. This is, of course, our spinoff show of the Time Machine, where we go and talk about kind of how we make the Time Machine. Now, I want to get into some of our most recent episodes. To start with the Newlywed Game, which just went up this week. And how big of a fan are you typically of TV game shows?
When I was younger,
Yeah.
I used to watch them, but it's just kind of faded,
Hmm.
for me. Everybody's kind of different,
Sure, sure.
and then what happens to some people is they kind of, fade out, but then they fade back in.
Yeah,
You know
yeah.
what I mean? You never know how things are gonna go. Just because right now I'm so busy with other things
Oh,
that I
sure.
don't take the time, but that doesn't mean that things won't change.
No, and a great example of that, Gar, is we've done a couple shows now on different game shows. I mean, off the top of my head, we obviously did the Newlywed Game that just went up. We did one on The Price is Right, The Family Feud, um, Hollywood Squares. Now, I remember when in doing the Family Feud episode, what was fun was doing the research, because how we did the research for that was actually going on YouTube, where we were able to check out a lot of the classic episodes, which was fun. It kind of, for both you and me, had that experience that was like, wow, we forgot how great the Family Feud really was.
Well, for me, my memories are the real old, really old days when they had Password on, and it was
Yeah,
black and white,
yeah, yeah,
and Alan Ludden was the host of the show, and of course, his wife Betty White,
sure.
who a lot of people don't know that she was married to him. She was a guest on a Password a lot.
Yeah,
She was like a regular guest. And so, that's how far back I go. Let's make a deal
wow.
with Monty Hall back in the black and white days, where people would pick behind door number 1 or door number
Yeah,
2,
yeah,
and then sometimes, it was funny on that show because you didn't you were taking a chance when you took a pick, between whatever door,
yeah.
and sometimes it turned out to be the wah wah
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
wah.
yeah. In fact, yeah, in fact, game shows, even in our current episode we just posted on a Newlywed Game, that's the thing that came up was the types of prizes they had on that show, which was a little different because these were prizes being given to people that were just recently married. They might get a new living room or a new kitchen, set, maybe a honeymoon vacation. And so the Newlywed Game was specifically centered for people that were just newly married.
Yeah, yeah, and that's what made for it to be such a loaded cannon.
Yeah,
You know what I mean? Because everybody was tuning in because you had no idea. Nothing was scripted, and you just you knew that something from left field was probably going to happen. And that's why a lot of people tuned in, because people would say things that they would never say any time in their regular life, but here they are on TV, and they wind up blurting out something, and they have no idea why they said that.
yeah, yeah. And Gar, you bring up about Betty White going on a game show and marrying the host of a show. I mean, the Newlywed Game, in doing the research, we came to learn had the opposite effect, where many of these contestants would go on the show, and because of what they said about their spouse, they would end up actually getting a divorce as a result of going on a TV game show.
Yes, yes. And when those situations happen, and when you were sitting at home, you kind of knew,
Yeah,
you know what I mean, that, oh no, they're in trouble.
yeah.
You know what I mean? And of course, nobody wants to wish that on
No,
anybody, you
no.
know what I mean? But it's just an unforeseen byproduct of doing the show. Nobody, had the foresight to think that
Yeah,
that could be, one of the results.
yeah, yeah. In fact, you and I were talking after we recorded the episode, and we found that out that like I remember watching the shows back, the Newlywed Game back in the day, and you'd be like, that guy's gonna sleep on the couch tonight, or even when the like when the wives would go backstage, it'd be like all the husbands would kind of get together and joke about their wives. You could feel the male bonding going on, and then when the wives would come back out, for example, I can't believe you said that. I can't believe you don't know me, but
Well, yeah, and it was really an eye opener because you always assume because they're married that they know each other so well.
yeah,
And then they go on this show and then you find out they don't even know each other at all.
yeah, yeah. And Gar, many of these game shows, and like Newlywed Game in particular, as viewers watching it at home, oftentimes, like we discussed, you find yourself like, oh, that was me. This is what I would say, or I wonder what he's going to say. And you try to guess the answers they were going to give, and you'd almost hope that they're going to give some kind of crazy answer just to as a reaction, you'd get.
Well, and that was the whole thing behind why people were tuning in is because of that. It was so unpredictable.
Yeah, yeah. And Gar, I gotta tell you, I think you probably agree with me. One thing I enjoy about doing our show, oftentimes, part of the fun is just planning what we're going to be doing the episode on. Me will get together on the phone and discuss. Hey, I thought this would be fun to do an episode on this. What about you, Gar? Do you have any ideas? And we go back and forth. Or oftentimes we come up with our ideas for future episodes as we're doing an episode. Like I can't tell. The reason we recently did our 3-part episode on the Ed Sullivan Show is how many times in other episodes did the topic of Ed Sullivan Show come up? So you start thinking after a while, okay, that's come up a lot. So maybe it's time to do a show on the Ed Sullivan Show.
And rightly so. I mean, the guy is really starting to fade,
Yeah, yeah,
in people knowing. But in his time, he was an icon. I mean, he was the biggest thing on TV, and his show had the reputation that if you appeared on his show, you had a really good chance of becoming an explosion in popularity, for your act.
yeah,
So yeah, I mean, it was a known thing by musicians, and it was a coveted thing.
yeah,
It's really kind of sad, that it's fading and everything, but it's all its natural course. This is what
sure.
happens with everything. Nothing lasts forever. Um, but it was just I think it was a great decision to give him the credit due. And when we realized that we wanted to do one on Ed Sullivan, we realized that it was just too much to do just one episode.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
You
And,
know,
and that is what often will end up happening, Gar, and doing a show like on Ed Sullivan. Because first of all, you tell yourself, like you said, yeah, it's too much to just get it done in one episode. And you try to, you're still going to be leaving stuff out. And so it's like, let's do it the proper way. Let's do it 2 or 3 episodes, whatever it takes. And I'm glad we did because some things happened as a result of that. For example, Gar, in the next couple of weeks, because of our Ed Sullivan show that we did, you and I are going to get together and do an episode on what was your number one on your list for the top performance on the Ed Sullivan show, which was the Beatles. Now we're gonna have a little fun with
yes.
this because they were number one on your list, and a lot of people's list, to be honest, because when you hear people talk about that Sullivan show, they will often bring up the Beatles performing on that Sullivan show. So a lot of people had that reaction to them being on that show. So what we're gonna do is the Beatles put out a greatest hits collection called the Number Ones. They had 27 number one hits, if you can believe that. And so we're gonna have a little fun talking about their number one greatest hits album and the fact that they were your number one choice for Ed Sullivan performance.
Well, just another one of those things of things fading, into the sunset and everything like that, But a lot of people have really lost what made that such a big deal,
Mhm.
and you have to understand that when they did that, I was just a young child. I was uh, barely in elementary school, I think maybe first or second grade.
Yeah.
And yet, them being on the Ed Sullivan show, I cannot describe how profound it was. Even though I was just a young child, I knew at that moment when I was watching this that this was a huge deal. This was big,
Yeah.
probably the biggest thing that I had ever seen at that time. And I mean, it's really hard to put that in context to really understand how profound it would have to be to have that kind of effect on a young child that knows nothing about music.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I can tell you, Gar, from doing the research for episode, what I did is I went online and I went on YouTube and I was able to find many of these performances from the Ed Sullivan Show. I came across the Beatles one, and you and I kind of had the same response, which was kind of seeing it from that perspective, somebody that wasn't there at the time when it originally aired on TV. I mean, you could hear like the roar of the crowd. I could hear like I felt like I was there that night at the show. The screaming, crazy girls that were screaming. I mean, the fact that it was in, it just I felt like I was there. It felt like even though I'm just watching kind of an old recording, it came alive to me, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, it's just, you know, um, I don't think that I've ever experienced anything that profound
Yeah,
by an entertainment act
yeah,
ever since.
yeah.
And I mean, I can only speak for myself,
Sure, sure.
but I had never experienced anything like what happened on that night when they appeared on the Ed Sullivan show. I had never seen anything having that kind of an effect on the public.
Yeah,
One of the things that they pointed out when the Beatles appeared on there was everybody was at home watching it so much that crime went down
wow,
drastically.
wow. Just think of yeah,
That in itself kind of gives you, these are those kind of little things that gives you a measurement.
yeah, yeah,
Very few things happen where the public is so enthralled with it that it would affect something like that, where it would affect crime going down
wow,
on
wow.
that night.
And again, just to
But
put
that
it
was
in
a
a
thing. It was a
yeah,
well-known thing. People were talking about it. It was on the news,
yeah,
after the fact. So, those are the only things that I can point out to try to give people an idea
yeah,
about how profound that was.
yeah,
More profound than any other act that had ever appeared on the Ed Sullivan show. What they had done on that night, no one else has come close to.
yeah. And just to put it in a historical time frame, this is around the time. Reason there was such excitement over the Beatles is because it's when they are coming to the America for the first time. Even though people knew who the Beatles were, but it was a big deal around that time, and Ed Sullivan kind of shone a spotlight on these guys, and I just had so much fun doing the episode. Another great thing that came out. My number one, like as far as breakout stars, we also did an episode talking about the breakout stars of Ed Sullivan Show was the Muppets. Now, and that people might laugh at that, but just think about it. And the reason I included that was as my number one is because I had no idea that the Muppets dated back to Ed Sullivan, and actually, if you see a lot of the early Muppets that were featured on Ed Sullivan, It's not Kermit the Frog or any of the current Muppets we all know and love. There's very early edition of the
Just
Muppets.
in its development
Yeah, yeah,
stages.
yeah,
But it's just that was the show where if you wanted to launch something and you wanted it to go big,
yeah,
that was your chance.
yeah. I mean, we're
And
talking about
some people were able to do good with it,
yeah,
but there was a lot of acts
yeah,
that appeared on the Ed Sullivan Show, hoping that that same kind of magic was going to happen for them.
mm-hmm.
And so there was a lot of acts that appeared on the Ed Sullivan Show that are just completely lost, in the whole scheme of everything.
Yeah,
Nobody even knows that they existed.
yeah,
But at the time, they actually got, their opportunities, and
sure,
and it just didn't happen for everyone.
yeah,
It only happened, the old saying, the cream rises to the top.
yeah,
And and the acts, that did capitalize on their appearance on the show, they were able to, capitalize on it. They were able to actually turn that into what you would call a parlay.
sure, sure. And Gar, and bringing up the Muppets too, part of the reason they're number one on my list, not just for the historical factor and fact that they did date back to that Sullivan Show, but let's think about it. A guy actually got his start in the entertainment business as a puppeteer. The Muppets are puppets actually that we all know and love, but the fact that you could have that kind of reaction to a puppet and we could be entertained. I mean, that is a true breakout star to me.
Well, he did something with puppets that no one else had even thought of.
Until that point,
You
yeah, yeah,
know,
yeah.
and that's his own, I guess, special genius.
And Gar Borras, this brings me to another avenue that takes place during our show. Gar Borras is known for his huge vocabulary. You use words like trailblazers and stuff like that throughout the episode, and it's
Parlay.
yeah, yeah, and again, it's an important thing because even in listening back to the episodes, it's fun that you kind of start to realize we all have our own little fun little speech patterns. I caught myself in so many of the episodes, and I try like think of something else to say, like that's interesting, that's interesting,
Well, when you watch back, of course,
Yeah,
who we are
yeah,
our own worst
worst,
critics.
yeah. But the one thing that really comes through on each of the episodes is the great chemistry you and I have. We bounce off of each other, and even in probably the hardest part is doing the research because when people listen to the show, we want them to have the feeling we know what we're talking about. That we're giving historical facts, we're giving important dates. We don't want to just come across as oh everything's great. We want to actually have somebody learn something from the episode. I mean, the Newlywed edition is a great like we come to find out that the reason the show was canceled is because the Newlywed Game had a very controversial TV producer. He got
Producer.
involved in some controversies, and it's interesting. We always go into an episode learning a lot more than what we think we're going to learn.
Yes, yes. And I think doing the research is us giving respect
Yeah,
to the whoever we're doing the episode on.
yeah,
It's just only natural, to give that kind of respect,
yeah,
to the people that are our topics.
yeah, yeah,
you
yeah.
know so
Eh,
and of course, we pick them because they're special to our hearts.
yeah, yeah.
You know what I mean? So I think it's just, you know you know hoping the public recognizes that we are giving the respect to the people that are our subjects.
Yeah, and the passion comes alive during the episodes. Like you said, it's always something that we have a true passion for. And otherwise, the episodes wouldn't come out as great as they did. And you can hear that when we're recording the shows and as you listen back to the stuff. But the other thing, Gar, is like, for example, we did a recent episode on the very first Cheap Trick album. And that came out a lot different than I thought. Okay, we're just going to be talking about what a great album is and how we like the songs. Come to find out about, despite the fact that many of the songs on the debut Cheap Trick album kind of have an upbeat kind of sound to them, were written about very dark subject matters. And I just thought, wow, it really shined a light on what a great songwriter Rick Nielsen really is.
Well, I mean, his body of work speaks for itself.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
know, the songs were nice and very catchy.
Mhm.
And he was always, talking about things in the songs, that, for some reason were, things that people would latch onto,
Yeah,
and I like that. You know
yeah,
what I mean?
yeah,
He just had that ability, to do that. And that doesn't grow on trees. That's not something that is you can go to school and learn how to do. And
yeah,
you
yeah.
know, you know what I mean? It's
Sure.
something that a human being has to develop within themselves.
Yeah.
And it's songwriting, you
Hmm.
know?
And that's, I think, when you're talking about any great record, any great body of music, the key is always about songwriting, songs that have great hooks that you can sing along to. And that was interesting doing about the Cheap Trick episode is a lot of the songs sound kind of upbeat, but they're about really dark subject matter. Or I remember the first time I shared during that episode hearing the song "Oh Candy," I kind of thought it was about being in love with some girl. It's not even about that. It's about a photographer that the band was very close to committed suicide, and they called it Candy because his initials were MM, and so they said, okay, we'll call it like Eminem Candy. That's the name of the song, but it had nothing to do with what the song was even about, you know.
Well, but that's part of the art.
Yeah, yeah, and
You
that's what
know
I
what I
picked up
mean?
on in doing that episode, and so it's fun when we do these episodes and they come out differently or not necessarily like we originally, and we always learn a lot more than what we thought we would going into it.
Or I mean, we're already know a lot about the subjects and
Yeah,
stuff
yeah,
like that, but then we discover things that we didn't even know,
yeah.
and that is the real beauty.
Yeah, yeah. In fact, I remember doing the episode. We did another kind of three-part episode on the Tonight Show, and it was during that the subject of Ed Sullivan show first came up because you learn, okay, Ed Sullivan, of course, preceded the Tonight Show and all that, and so we thought that would be kind of interesting to do a show on, and even in doing the episode on the Tonight Show, you told me while we're in the middle of recording that, you said, you know what? A big part of the Tonight Show was not just Johnny Carson and the people that host the show, but the guest. We got to do an episode just on make a list of the greatest guests that ever appeared on the show, and that happened in the middle of doing the show, and and God dang it, Garb, that's exactly what we did.
Well, it kind of taken a life of its own.
Yeah, yeah, and so much of what that's another thing that I really love about the show. We could there really is no end in sight for the show because we cover everything from music, TV shows, classic movies. It's one of those things that we realized after we launched Gar Borras' Time Machine. It's really no way to ever run out of topics, you know.
No, and you know, I cannot thank you enough
Yeah,
for really kind of coming up with this whole thing about doing this,
yeah,
because originally it all started as you doing an interview with me as the lead singer for, my band.
yeah,
And so now I think in doing those interviews, I think you must have recognized that there was a passion that I had for pop culture.
sure,
You know what
sure.
I mean? I think that is where the idea, this, you were kind of
Yeah,
recognizing that from the interview and seeing, seeing something.
Yeah.
And, so really, thank you, Jason.
Sure, sure. It's been,
I think it's a wonderful idea. I love doing this. I hope more and more people enjoy our show,
yeah.
and more and more people start tuning in, and start sharing the passion just like we do.
Yeah, it's been a lot of fun, Gar, and I'll tell you what it was. Initially, I of course saw you play in another tribute band called Snake Pit, which was kind of a tribute to all things Slash. Velvet Revolver, Guns N' Roses, his solo material. And I remember initially thinking, "Wow, there's no other tribute band like this. This is really kind of unique." And it kind of works on paper, but what you guys ended up kind of finding out was, as fun and unique as it was, people would come to the shows, and of course they're familiar with Guns N' Roses material, but they weren't familiar with a lot of the other material. And so that's kind of why you decided to move on from that to what you're doing now and forming your own band, Appetite for Destruction. And so a lot over the years, you and I have talked about what it's like to play in a tribute band, because that's what you know. And so I thought it would be an interesting story. And through that, I found right away, this guy, Gar, is a great storyteller.
Wow, wow. I mean, I don't think anybody looks at themselves that
Yeah,
way. You know what
yeah.
I mean? And never in my life have I ever even considered
Hmm.
something like that.
Yeah,
That thought has never ever crossed my mind. The only thing I can say is I'm just sharing my passion.
yeah, yeah.
That's all I'm doing.
And I guess other things, I remember doing an episode because we've done also an interview series called On the Record, talking about some of your people were making lists of their favorite albums of all time around COVID when that first started breaking out. And you had some great ones on your list. We did an episode, I remember, on the Beatles' Lonely Hearts Club and
Sergeant
Sergeant Pepper's,
Pepper's,
yeah,
Million
Fumis.
Dollar Babies.
Yeah,
Uh,
great,
it was quite a few episodes that came out of that.
great shows. And it was, I think, especially the Beatles and the Alice Cooper one, where I thought, okay, this guy can talk about playing in trivia. He can talk about great music that we all have a passion for. What if we could take it a step further, talk about some of our favorite movies, our TV shows of all time? And that is kind of where we launched Gar Borras' Time Machine. And it has been nothing but fun. And we never know where we're going to go with it, Gar. One of the things we're going to do in the next coming weeks is that we've never done before with the show. Like we did an episode on Happy Days, one of my all-time favorite TV shows and yours. And never before we've ever kind of done something where typically we'll find, okay, let's do an episode on Happy Days, Laverne and Shirley, Three's Company. We've done that. But like I told you, hey, it's the 50th anniversary of Happy Days. Never done it before, Gar, but let's do an episode talking about the fact that it's the 50th anniversary of Happy Days and how much we love the show. There's no rule that says we can't do that, right?
Oh, hell no. And and
Yeah.
and the beauty of it is the show had such a wonderful long run,
Mm.
and there's just so much that I'm sure there's plenty more to cover,
Sure, sure.
for the show, in giving the show the respect that it deserves.
Okay, Gar. And before we wrap this up for today, it's been another fun episode of Gar Borras' Rewind, episode number 6 here. Where are you coming from today?
I'm at the Orange Circle in Old Town Orange.
Wow.
Right behind me over there is the fountain, and the cars are going around me in a circle, and there's a bunch of people here just chilling on a beautiful Sunday.
Yeah,
Yeah, people have their dogs and their kids, and spending some time in the shade,
there you go.
and there's plenty of beautiful restaurants around here, and wonderful, really unique shops. So, if anybody wants to, just come to a place just to, maybe get something to eat and walk around and look at some very unique shops and stuff like that. It's really, really nice here.
Well, you know, and Gar, just to, before we wrap it up, finally, thank you again for doing this. I always have a blast doing it. Next week, 1 week from today, we're going to get together again and we're going to record our next episode of The Time Machine, talking about one of our all-time favorite movies I look forward to, Rain Man. Of course, Tom Cruise and legendary Dustin Hoffman. That's going to be a truckload of fun. Gar, you enjoy the rest of the day, my friend, and this will be going up sometime next week. I'll be sure to let you know. Take care, my friend.
Woohoo!
Woo! Bye. Over and out.